Across Britain's grey skies and soot-smudged chimneys in the 1950s and 60s, there once flickered a dance of grease and golden batter. The humble chip shop, not merely serving cod and haddock, but offering scraps. Crisp shards of fried batter scooped from the bottom of fryers, dropped into paper cones, a treasure for the poorest households. These were the scraps, warm, cheap, salty, almost rebellious in their joy. At a farthing or two a portion, they cost next to nothing, yet delivered the same fierce satisfaction as proper fish. In pit villages of Yorkshire and the Northeast, in Barnsley and Sunderland, where wages shrank before the week was done, surveys in 1955 recorded scraps in over 40% of takeaway orders. The smell of hot oil, the hiss of fryer baskets, the paper rustling as the cone was folded. These were more than food, they were ritual, and every economic scrape carried pride. Children running with fingertips stained, pockets jingling with spare change together. But in the 1970s, health inspectors, those unseen custodians of order, forced chip shops to abandon scraps, citing hygiene. And just like that, for 2 whole generations, a cone of scraps, the cheapest hot food on the high street, slipped from everyday life. The crunch, the ink-stained fingers, the vinegar-sharp air, those sensory memories remain as vivid as if they were yesterday. Then came curry and chips, a thick, gloopy sauce poured over fat, hand-cut chips, turning from novelty to staple across northern England and the Midlands in the 1960s. Chip shop curry cost around 4 pence a ladle, cheap enough for apprentices, for school children pooling their pennies. Outside Coventry, Leicester, queues would form late on Friday nights. The smell clung to bus rides home, to uniforms, to tights and jackets long after the paper parcel had empty holes in the arms. These dishes were more than starch and sauce. They were symbols, symbols of post-war austerity, of communities rebuilding, of small pleasures wrested from lean times. They were markers of class, region, hunger, and inventiveness. They spoke of a Britain that knew scarcity, but would not forgo flavor, companionship, the comfort of oil and salt on the tongue. Yet, with prosperity, regulation, changing tastes, many of these fast foods vanished. The ritual of steaming newspaper parcels, the thrill of curry just dripping from paper, both relics now. As we wander further through this vanished menu, remember, these fast foods were more than mere meals. They held stories of struggle and solace, of community tables under smoky ceilings, of laughter echoing in chip shop booths. What did we trade away for the convenience we enjoy now? In the shadow of neon lights and on the linoleum floors of Britain's earliest burger joints, a dessert appeared that carried prestige in the eyes of a child. The brown derby, a humble ring donut, glazed and warm, crowned with a swirl of soft ice cream and laced with chocolate sauce. It wasn't just a sweet, it was theater on a plastic tray. Introduced in the late 1960s and priced at just 2 shillings, it fell neatly within pocket money range, making it the jewel of Saturday afternoons and birthday treats. Sales records from 1975 revealed over 100,000 brown derbies sold weekly. Proof that even amid inflation and industrial strikes, indulgence still had a place. Red vinyl booths in Nottingham, Sheffield, and Cudworth bore witness to thousands of quiet celebrations. A child's good report card, a dad's pay rise, a mom's sigh of relief at week's end. Beneath flickering fluorescent bulbs, those brown derbies became more than dessert. They were little crowns of joie, crowned with a chocolate drizzle. Motorways told a different story, of mobility, of freedom, of a Britain on the move. And with them came a breakfast as grand as its name, the Olympic breakfast, piled high with bacon, eggs, sausages, mushrooms, tomatoes, and fried bread. It emerged in the early 1960s not just as sustenance but as statement. At 4 shillings and 6 pence in 1970, it wasn't cheap, but it was generous. Families often shared plates. Lorry drivers leaned in to eat it alone under the hum of roadside diners along the M1 and M6. By 1978, more than 2 million Olympic breakfasts were served annually. But by the time the last roadside diners closed in 2018, So too ended the era of checkered floors, sticky formica tables, and ketchup bottles left open beside the sugar dispensers. Memory clings not to calories but to context. Those long breakfasts are remembered not just for what was eaten, but who sat beside you as dawn broke through fogged windows. Fast food in Britain was also learning to be clever. Enter the McDLT in the mid-1980s, an awkward but well-meaning invention that separated hot from cold. Beef and bun on one side, lettuce and tomato on the other. The hot stays hot, the cool stays cool, went the slogan. Packaged in a bulky foam container, it was more engineering than cuisine. But while America embraced the novelty briefly, British customers shrugged. The DIY nature, the oversized packaging, the impracticality, it proved too fussy. By 1990, it was gone. Some still remember the strange thrill of assembling your own burger under the watchful eye of a curious sibling or bored friend. Yet the McDLT became more of a footnote than a meal. It was a glimpse of a future that never quite caught on here. Proof that even in fast food, not every American dream translates. But other experiments took root. The Bender in a Bun, an oddly named but beloved offering, featured a curled frankfurter, its slits splaying out like petals as it grilled, tucked into a white roll with onions and ketchup. Priced at just 35p in 1976, it found loyal fans from Leeds to Croydon. Factory workers, students, late-night wanderers, many recall that salty sausage paired with the hum of a jukebox in the background. It was simple, satisfying, and a little bit cheeky, like Britain itself in those years. By the 1970s, Britain's fast food landscape grew bolder, more curious, more willing to flirt with the exotic. In came the pineapple ring burger, a slice of canned sunshine perched atop a charred beef patty. Sweet syrup met scorched meat, creating a clashing duet of sugar and smoke. It reflected a country enamored with imported glamours, tinned fruit from tropical ports, postcards from packaged holidays. Between 1969 and 1973, Britain's pineapple imports soared by 300%. It wasn't just a burger topping, it was an aspiration. For many, it tasted odd. Some found it fresh and daring, others called it an abomination. But either way, they remembered it. The pineapple burger sat on menus like a strange ambassador from warmer shores, bringing with it both curiosity and confusion. And by the 1990s, it disappeared, leaving behind only the memory of a time when anything foreign seemed a little more sophisticated. More beloved, if only because it was doused in golden syrup, was the Jubilee pancake. Created to celebrate the Queen's Silver Jubilee in 1907, it was no royal banquet, just a stack of thin, crepe-like pancakes drowned in syrup, crowned with a scoop of vanilla ice cream. Sold for 60p, it became a staple at roadside diners, especially along routes to Devon and Cornwall, where families paused their holiday journeys for hot tea, toilet breaks, and sugary comfort. Company records from 1982 show over 50,000 servings sold monthly. Children licked plastic spoons clean, their cheeks sticky, as trucks thundered past the window. For some, it was their first taste of a warm dessert in a public place. And when roadside diners fell silent in the early 2000s, the Jubilee pancake vanished too, along with the clatter of cutlery and soft hum of conversation over steaming mugs. Then came something richer still, Burger King's Mushroom Double Swiss. A 1990s icon, the dish offered 2 beef patties drenched in creamy mushroom sauce and crowned with Swiss cheese. Priced at $2.49 in 1990, it was positioned as upscale, continental. Office workers and weary commuters queued at stations in Manchester, London, Glasgow. For some, it was the richest burger they'd ever tasted. For others, it was too much, too creamy, too heavy, too hard to eat on the go. But on a winter's evening outside Victoria Station, biting into that messy, mushroom-soaked sandwich felt like indulgence wrapped in wax paper. It was warmth against the cold. It was dinner on the run. It was, for a moment, satisfaction. If the mushroom Swiss offered richness, then Wimpy's nicer Boca Glory gave spectacle. Arriving in tall glass tumblers, layered with ice cream, syrup, cream, and fruit, it was a sundae for the imagination. At 45p in 1974, it wasn't cheap, but on birthdays and bank holidays, It was the crown jewel of a child's meal. Branches in Blackpool, Scarborough, Brighton, everywhere laughter and seagulls met, saw cues for the treat. 30,000 portions a week at its peak. And when menus slimmed in the late 80s, the nicer Boca Glory disappeared, replaced by smaller, simpler offerings. But no modern Sunday quite captures the same magic. A dish that looked too magnificent to eat, but was eaten all the same. Each of these dishes was more than novelty. They were attempts to expand the British palate, to experiment with indulgence and identity. And whether they were adored or discarded, they left a mark, not just on taste buds, but on memory. Beyond the realm of sweets and novelties, British fast food once pulsed with something deeper: hunger after work, comfort after cold. In the industrial towns of the north, Sheffield, Newcastle, Glasgow, Wimpy's steak and onion pie became a beacon on dark winter nights. Introduced in the 1960s, it offered hearty nourishment at 1 shilling and sixpence, a thick pastry shell, peppery meat, and steam rising like a warm sigh into the damp air. These pies filled bellies in places where work was hard, wages tight, and warmth precious. In neon-lit diners under gray skies, workers from mills and foundries queued shoulder to shoulder, coats still dusted with the day's labor. The National Menu Survey of 1973 showed steak and onion pies making up 12% of Wimpy's hot food sales in the North. Yet as lighter, cleaner menus swept in during the 1980s, they disappeared, leaving only the scent of gravy and the memory of strong tea in plastic mugs. Then came experiments that stumbled. McDonald's Cheddar Melt in 1988 tried to capture local tastes with a melted cheese sauce meant to mimic Britain's beloved cheddar. But at $1.89, and with a sauce that tasted more like spread than cheese, it flopped. Complaints poured in from Manchester and Glasgow. Newspapers mocked it. Customers tried it once and never again. It lasted less than 6 months. Even more ambitious was McDonald's Pizza, the McPizza. In the early 1990s, Britain became a test bed for this strange import. Sold at $2.99, it arrived in its own little box, but took too long to cook, clogging up fast food kitchens and cooling customers' tempers. Trials in Birmingham, Luton, and Cardiff lasted barely a year. It was pizza by name, but fast food by struggle, and it faded almost unspoken from menus. Still in the roadside cafes of Britain, pudding held its own. At Little Chef, the taily sponge, steaming hot, soaked in custard, became a cult favorite. Introduced in the 1970s and selling over 250,000 portions annually by decade's end, it was the kind of dish remembered not for complexity, but for the way it clung to the spoon and to memory. Children half asleep in the backseat of Vauxhall Cavaliers remember the hush of the dining room, the scratch of chairs on tile, and the scent of sugar warming in air, already thick with fried bacon. And for those chasing something a little more glamorous, Wimpy's Banana Split offered sophistication on a plate: long glass dishes, whipped cream peaks, cherries like rubies resting on a halved banana. It was 1970s elegance, or at least the closest thing to it many working-class families ever ordered. At 50p, it was a treat, a reward, a dessert too beautiful to eat, until you did. National dessert surveys in 1976 ranked it among the top 5 sweets in Britain's fast food scene. By the 1990s, it too was gone, swept away by slimmer menus and changing appetites. But its legacy? Photographs of children grinning under mountains of cream, parents stealing bites with a shared spoon, seaside days frozen in time. Every rise carried its decline. These dishes, once mundane, now glow with the light of memory. We rarely mourn the end of a burger or a pudding, but perhaps we should. What do we lose when familiar comforts slip quietly from our shared tables? In every vanished meal, there is a story not just of taste, but of time. Wimpy's Quarter Pounder Supreme, for example, introduced in the early 1970s, wasn't merely a burger, it was a statement. With peppery seasoning and onion relish, it stood apart from its American counterparts. At 65p, it offered something homegrown, something distinctly British in the shadow of creeping fast food globalization. By 1978, over 200,000 were sold monthly, and yet, by the mid-1990s, it had vanished. Reformulated to meet international standards, its soul was lost. Letters poured into local papers, Liverpool, Bristol, Nottingham, lamenting that the taste had changed. And they were right. The name remained, but the memory did not match the bite. McDonald's Arch Deluxe, pitched as a grown-up burger for a more refined palate in 1996, never stood a chance. Marketed with imagery of boardrooms and silk ties, it fell flat against the reality of lukewarm buns and limp lettuce. At $2.99, it was one of the chain's priciest offerings. But one trade magazine famously called it the burger that forgot to taste. Customers in London, Birmingham, Manchester tried it once, twice at best. It was gone by 1997, remembered more for its pretensions than its presence. Yet not every flop came with such ambition. The Rodeo Burger from Burger King, launched in the mid-1990s, was more adolescent indulgence than adult sophistication, a standard beef patty topped with barbecue sauce and a pair of onion rings. It cost $1.99 and flew off the counters on Friday nights in Leeds, Birmingham, Manchester. Students lined up, school blazers stained with sauce, laughter bouncing off Formica walls. But its sweetness divided opinion. Fewer than 1 in 5 customers returned for a second, and by 1998, the Rodeo Burger rode off the menu. Chicken, too, had its moment. Burger King's Chicken Whopper, introduced in the late 90s, aimed to lure the health-conscious. At $2.59, it was neither indulgent nor particularly light, a compromise few wanted to repeat. It sold briskly in London's Canary Wharf among office crowds. But in towns like Hull or Preston, it struggled. By the early 2000s, the poster had faded, the chicken forgotten. Some chains tried to fit Britain's full English onto a tray. Wimpy's Grill Up, offering bacon, sausage, egg, and chips, was a hearty nod to the cafe classics. At 75p in 1973, it filled the gap between breakfast and dinner. Factory workers in Coventry and Wolverhampton formed long queues. By 1976, national sales peaked at 100,000 a month. But the dish proved too heavy, too slow to prepare, and by the late 80s it was gone, sacrificed to the new religion of speed and uniformity. Then came the strangest attempt of all, McDonald's Fruit and Fiber McMuffin, a wholemeal muffin packed with dried fruit and cereal grains, launched in the early 1990s. It tried to surf the rising tide of health food culture, especially in university towns like Oxford and Cambridge. But raisins inside a breakfast muffin? Customers recoiled. Less than 8% ordered it twice. Within 6 months, it disappeared. These dishes, awkward and beloved in equal measure, remind us of Britain's culinary restlessness. We were always searching, hungry for flavor, for novelty, for a taste of somewhere else, or sometimes for something that felt like home. They were experiments in identity as much as ingredients. What remains now is not the recipe, but the feeling, the flicker of a childhood booth, the clink of loose change, the first bite of something new. As the 2000s approached, Britain's fast food menus grew safer, more global, more uniform, less whimsical. Yet some final experiments flickered into life before fading. The Angus burger, imported from America and launched in early 2000s Britain, promised a gourmet experience for $3.99. Glossy adverts in Manchester and Reading teased real steakhouse flavor. But most customers peeled back the wrapper only to find a burger indistinguishable from cheaper ones. Surveys showed just 20% willing to repurchase. By 2003, the Angus burger quietly vanished. Abroad, it endured. Here, it became another culinary ghost. Ambitious, overpromised, underdelivered. Seafood had its turn too, and none more curious than McDonald's McLobster. Priced at $4.49, it arrived in London and Edinburgh branches in the late 1990s, like a delicacy in disguise. A cold lobster salad stuffed into a split roll, served with plastic cutlery under the red glare of fast food interiors. It sold well in novelty-driven city offices, but failed to gain traction elsewhere. Food writers mocked the attempt. Champagne in a pint glass, they said. Only 10,000 sandwiches were sold before the trial was scrapped. For those who tried it, the memory is vivid, but strange. Lobster in a burger joint, eaten with fingertips still smelling faintly of vinegar and ketchup. Even beyond burgers and buns, fast food once offered entire rituals. Pizza Hut's salad bars in the 1980s and 90s became icons of family dining. At $2.50 for unlimited trips in 1991, children stacked wobbling towers of pasta spirals, grated carrots, iceberg lettuce, and mountains of thick, tangy salad cream. It was chaos disguised as choice. Laughter filled the booths as parents looked away and kids turned greens into games. Surveys from the era show families averaging 3 trips per person. But by the 2000s, nutrition campaigns and menu overhauls swept away the indulgence. The bottomless bowl became regulated. The salad cream thinned, the portion sizes shrank. Yet for many, the memory of those towers, wonky, colorful, and absurd, is stronger than any pizza ever served. They were part of something larger: togetherness, freedom, the unspoken rule that here, just for now, you could go back for more. And so we come to the end, not just of the menu, but of an era. From scraps of batter and Yorkshire cones to banana splits and seaside booths, these fast foods told the story of a country at work and at play, hungry for invention, bound by habit, always tasting its way forward. They marked moments: childhood birthdays, motorway journeys, night shifts ended and dates begun. Some were unforgettable, others best left in memory, but all were ours. Today they survive only in fragments: old menus posted online, faded photographs, the tug of recollection when a certain smell drifts past. They remind us of who we were, how we lived, what we reached for. And as we sit in today's sleek cafes, tapping on phones while waiting for our flat whites, a quiet question lingers. But was that really the whole story?